As soon as you took the schedule, I don't know what's next.
Here he is.
Oh, Fred? Oh,
Is this yours?
Yes, thank you, sorry.
I don't know anything about the next guy.
Yeah, I know nothing about you either.
Uh, Fred grew up in Melrose Park, and he went to Weber. What's
Fenwick, Fenwick.
I don't have a good idea what Fenwick is. And he went to the University of Wisconsin and the University of Chicago. At one point, he went to the University of Chicago, wanted to do Italian American studies, and they laughed at him. Now he's distinguished professor of Italian American studies and English at Queens College in New York. So he's got the last laugh. As I always say, Fred has read more Italian American literature than anybody else that I know. And he's a great guru. And he's agreed to be with us today, as he has been for many of our IA Literatis in the past. So Fred, some comments?
Yes, I have. I've written something especially for us today. I want to thank Dominic for convincing me to become the president of the Chicago chapter of the American Italian Historical Association way back when I first came back from Italy and didn't know how I could become Italian American. And Dominic was there, convinced me to become the chapter president while he took the role as president of the National Association, and helped me walk into this world of Italian American literature when nobody else told me about it, nobody else supported me. So Dominic, you are, if I'm a guru to the young people I work with today, you were my guru, and you were probably the only guru available back then. I prepared a few minutes of comments, and I'm just going to go into them. I was told by very well-meaning intellectuals that Italian American literature wasn't an appropriate subject for serious scholarly study. There simply wasn't enough scholarship to build upon. The writers hadn't achieved a high quality of writing or a mass great enough to warrant such work. So it's no surprise to me that if I, as a serious US American student of literature, was pushed away from it, then the same would happen to other potential scholars in other parts of the world. It took a long time for Italian American literature to be identified as such. And this had to do with the late entry of Italian Americans into the ranks of critics and scholars who began to pay attention to it. It's part of what I call indigenuity, a word that came to me, it just kind of came to me while listening to a conversation among Latinx writers, Sherry Moraga, Cecilia Herrera Rodriguez, and Luis Rodriguez, in a recent online conversation in their series In Good Company, the Latinx Public Voice. The trio discussed the importance of connecting to their indigenous cultures as they develop their responses to living in today's world. Listening to their rich exchange prompted me to write the following, which I posted in a chat. Indigenuity is created by every human being, connected to the energies that were lost through acculturation, to whatever it is that America meant to those indigenous people of other places who came here as immigrants. Deep inside, we are all indigenous to some place. That is the place we all need to return to connect us to each other as humans. And not by fighting the identity categories that material powers have devised to divide us. You are all speaking the truths that we must carry back to our peoples as messages of hope. Now, I did an internet search just to see if I had created this word indigenuity, and alas, I hadn't. It turned up the following earlier use of the word in the work of author and activist Daniel Wildcat, a Yuki member of the Muskogee Nation of Oklahoma. and he's the author of Red Alert, Saving the Planet with Indigenous Knowledge. And he writes, indigenuity is the application of deep spatial wisdom held by indigenous peoples, American Indians, Alaska Natives, to solve practical problems we face today. Indigenuity is the result of a people's long intergenerational transmissions of experiential knowledge over millennia, resulting from their attentiveness to the inextricable symbiotic nexus of human cultures and the ecosystems, environments that gave tribal peoples their culture and identity. As such, indigenuity is a co-creation of humans and plants, animals, and other natural features of the world. Now, the writers here today practice what I call this idea of indigenuity. They speak the truth that was often unspeakable, whether through the inability to pass on what those who experienced it knew through English, or through personal or group shame of the experiences. Now, Karen, Tony, Peter, and Arthur have had this experience more in the past. Christina, Joey, Edward, and Terry are beginning to present this work. More often than not, it takes the work of such indigenous writers and critics to draw attention to the writing and the art produced by members of a culture who are not naturally part of the dominant cultures of a society. Antonio Gramsci alluded to this when he introduced the idea of the organic intellectual. And it's something that I took to heart as I began my foray into the study of Italian-American contributions to American literature. This certainly was the case for African-American, Latinx American, Jewish American, and scholars who challenged the canon of US American literature that had been set up and studied by the earlier academic institutions and who still challenge it today. What they were doing to culture was what Wildcat says must be done in our approaches to protecting our ecosystem. Now, the Italian-American Writers Association, which was founded in 1991 to promote Italian-American writing by encouraging its writing, reading, publication, distribution, translation, and study, includes members such as writers, readers, editors, publishers, agents, translators, teachers, scholars, all who are interested in the progress of Italian-American writing. To promote the production, publication, reception, and study of Italian-American writing, they formulated 3 rules. 1, read one another. We can't expect other people to read the books of Italian-American writers if we don't read them ourselves. 2, write or be written. Italian Americans need to write their own realities rather than waiting for others to do it for them. 3, buy each other's books. If we want publishers to publish Italian-American books, we need to show them a market for those books. They have a 4th rule, which is to write reviews of each other's books. Now, these are all rules that I observed long before they were made and promoted by this association, long before there even was an association. Back when I began my first research in the very room you're staying in right now, the Casa Italia Library, a building whose bricks were carried to the workers by my grandfather, Michele Rotolo, from Castellana Grotte in Puglia. Nonno Rotolo got the job through Father Perini, who caught him fiddling with the poor box in Mount Carmel Church, for he was too proud to ask directly for the money he had decided he was going, the little bit of which he was going to take. For you see, his young wife had died by her own hand in Elgin State Hospital, my maternal grandmother. His kids were then divided among friends like Omare Minoia, a paisano from his hometown of Castellana in Puglia. He had no relatives in Merle's Park. Some of the children were put in the Misericordia orphanage in Chicago, but he was to bring them back together again, so desperate that he would steal from the church. From this job, building the Sacred Heart Seminary, he got the money to travel into the city to visit his children at the orphanage. And on one of those bus trips, he met Donata Spino, who would become Grandma Toto, my second grandmother, and really the only one that I knew as a living person. Turns out Donata was a cousin of my father's mother, Isabella Fusaro Gardaphé, And so I would be twice related to my late uncles Rockin and Carmen, the two children she had with my grandfather. With the family together, he moved on with life to become my Italian mentor after the death of my father when I was 10 years old. 10 years later, I began my path toward being a born-again Italian after being the first of the family to return to Italy, a journey that I am now completing in a memoir to be entitled A Generation Removed, 5 chapters of which I read just last week in Alberobello in Puglia at a beautiful conference dedicated to migration, just a few kilometers from Castellana Grotto, the land where it all began for the Familia Rotolo in Melrose Park, now scattered around the US like so many dandelion seeds, blown far from home into lands that have become new homes that will maintain traditional knowledge only if they read authors such as the ones you are experiencing today. Those are my comments.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Questions for the distinguished professor from Queens College, who is now in Poland?
I'm in Poland, and in about a week I'll be in Greece, and then I come back to Poland, and then I go to Milan, and then I go to Verbania. Then I spend 3 weeks in Rome teaching at the Italian Diaspora Studies Seminar, summer seminar.
You too might have a future in Italian American studies.
Yes, there is a future. There is definitely a future.
Quick question for Fred.
Can I say one?
All right,
thing?
I'm going to stay and watch.
This is Carla. I just want to talk about how generous Professor Gardaphé has been with his mentorship and how important it is to pay it forward. Christina Morocco said he was the dissertation reader for her. He was also my dissertation reader, an outside reader. I didn't know him from Adam. I sent him an email, and through his support, I was able to do the first dissertation on Italian American literature in my program. So thank you.
And I could tell you today that 2 days ago, the latest dissertation committee I served on for Giannina Lucantoni, who will be also with you, Carla, in Rome. Ci vediamo a Roma fra 2 e 3 settimane. No? But she just finished her dissertation on Christ in Concrete, and I was on that committee. And it's even though I don't have my own graduate program, I'm like the gypsy professor. Have Italian American dissertation, we'll travel.
Okay, very good.
Wait,
Fred.
can I talk?
All right, I'm going to stay and watch if you don't mind.
It helps to tell the world your problems.